Alright y'all, so today we are going to talk about motion tweens. So we've already done classic tweens and shape tweens, and we've done those a few times, we're pretty good at those. Now we're going to talk about motion tweens, which are a little bit more complex, but a lot more versatile than the other two tweens. You can do a lot of neat things with them, and they're super easy to use once you get used to them. So I'm going to start off. I've got this blue circle here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it into a symbol. F8 if you're using the keyboard. I'm just going to call it circle. It doesn't matter if it's a movie clip or a graphic, we're just going to make a symbol. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself some frames to work with. I'm going to do 2 seconds of animation, so I'm going to go to my 2-second mark. And I am going to insert just a frame, or hit F5 on the keyboard to extend my frames out to 60. I don't want to insert a keyframe here, and we'll see why later, but I just want to extend this out from 1 to 60. So now I have 60 frames, and all 60 frames look exactly like frame 1. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click anywhere here in the timeline, and I'm going to go to create motion tween. Just like we would create a classic tween or a shape tween, we want to create a motion tween. And the motion tween turns our entire timeline from 1 to 60 gold to show that there's a motion tween applied. And you'll see that unlike the other tweens, we don't have an arrow or any kind of indication here. It is just all gold. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the frame that I want to do my first animation on. So I'm going to move to frame 60. And unlike a classic tween where we would set a keyframe and then make a change on the stage, we're actually going to make the change on the stage first. And then you will see that Animate sets the keyframe for us, specifically a special motion tween keyframe, which shows up as a little black diamond here. And there's a circle at the beginning there. So I'm going to go to my layer properties and make this black so that we can see this line a little bit better. So we have this line with lots of little dots on it. Starts with frame 1 and goes to frame 60. And if I play it, the circle just goes right across, 1 frame at a time. Da, 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 da. Pretty basic. We could do this with a classic tween. We could do this with a shape tween. Now here's something that we can't do with a classic tween. So let's say that I want my ball to go in an arc. We remember what an arc is. It is a line that is curved in a natural way. So if we were doing a shape tween, we would go to the middle and we would move our, we would set a keyframe, we would move our ball up, and then we would have to set a bunch of keyframes so that they would go in an arc. With a motion tween, rather than changing the frames and the symbol, what we can do is we can change the arc of the tween itself by grabbing the line. So I can grab this, move this up, and now my circle does that instead. And you'll see there are no keyframes set because I didn't move anything on the stage, but I can grab this and move it down. So now I have a keyframe on 30 and my arc is making a swoop. So now we have that. And you can really bend these arcs into all kinds of wonky shapes. The fewer keyframes that you have, so the dots here are your frames, the fewer frames that you have to work with, the more jagged your arcs are going to get. So the best thing to do is make sure that you have plenty of keyframes to work with. Now let's say that I just want to move this whole thing. I just want this to be, at the bottom. I can just select the entire line and just move it down. Very versatile. Nice and simple. Okay, so let's say that I've changed my mind and I actually want this to be 1 second long instead of 2 seconds long. I can go to the very end of my motion tween here, and I can grab the end and pull it so that it is at the 1 second mark. And now my motion tween is 1 second long. There's half as many frames, but it still moves in exactly the same pattern. Gonna undo that. Okay, so let's say that what I actually want is I want the ball to follow this this exact thing, but I want it to have some easing instead of just being evenly spaced, because I want my animation to be appealing. For that, we're gonna have to get a little bit more in depth. So we're gonna go to our tween, right click and go to Refine Motion Tween. Now, it's gonna open for me a graph editor. And I know the first thing you think is, oh no, there's math. Yes, unfortunately there's a little bit of math here, but you don't really have to understand the mathematical part of it. There's just a few key things that you want to understand. So we have a graph here. As you can see, we have two graphs. We have a graph for location X and a graph for location Y. And basically these graphs just tell you where on the stage your object is at the time of that frame. So if I go over to frame 1 and I click on my object, I can see that on the y-axis, Y position, it's at 307.4 pixels. And it's real tiny, but if I go to my Y position here and I go to frame 1, we're in that kind of zone there. Same thing with my X. So without really having to understand the exact maths that's going on with this, just know that you have a graph for your X and you have a graph for your Y. Now, there's a difference between the graph for, or the locations for your object and the locations for your path. As you can see, if I click here, this gives me the XY for the object, and if I click here, this gives me the XY for the path. It doesn't really matter which one you click on, we're editing this anyway. So let's say that I want to go ahead and put in some easing. The second thing you want to know is that there's just a button for this. There is an Add Ease button. So we're going to select a property, we'll say the X, and you just pick what kind of ease you want. So we'll start with simple and we'll do slow. So what you'll notice is that two things change. One, it shows that there's a change to your graph. So this was the original line and now we're sloping like this. And you can see that we have a new line, a new curve here showing that the tween has changed. So if we watch it, we can see that we have a slow in that is happening. If I do the same thing on the Y, simple, slow, you'll see that the slow in becomes a little bit smoother. So when we just had it on the X, it was only applying the slow in to whenever the ball was moving on the X-axis. When we apply it to both, it's moving on both. So we could do slow, fast. So we'll go to X, we'll do fast, Y, fast, And now it starts very quickly, goes very slow in. Other examples, besides simple, we've got stop and start. So let's say medium for stop and start. You can apply the same the same ease to X and Y by just clicking location and going up here and going to whatever you want it to be. So let's say a medium stop and start. Stop and start is going to give us a slow in, slow out. So it starts fast and goes slow and gets fast again. That's usually the opposite of what we want, but this is just an example. Bounce and spring. So this is going to be more like a ball bounce. If you take a look at our graphs, they're getting real wild, but you don't really have to worry about that. So that's our bounce. It goes down, it springs back. Lots of options. You can kind of mess around with these with your own stuff, other eases, different waves, sawtooth wave, sine wave, all of this stuff. Sine wave makes it go back and forth like a sine wave. And it's all going to stay within the number of frames that we have and the 2 seconds that we are working with. I'm just going to set everything back to simple and just a regular medium ease in. All right, so to close this, you can either double click it, open close by double clicking, or you can right click and uncheck refine motion tween. Now let's say that you're happy with this overall movement, but you actually want the ball to stop right here at frame 35 and not move anymore. You don't want the rest of this, but you don't want the ball to disappear. What you can do is you can set a keyframe. So you're going to right click, insert keyframe, position, scale, skew, rotation, color, filter, all. And then what we want to do is we want to split our motion tween into 2 separate motion tweens. And I'll show you why. So let's say that I want this half to no longer be a motion tween. I just want the ball to stop. If I split my motion tween in half, so I go down, right click, split motion, I now have actually 2 different motion tweens. And we've got a little bit of a jump there because of the way that I did the keyframes. But let's say that I just don't want this at all anymore. Right click, remove motion tween, and now it just stops there. I'm going to go ahead and clear this keyframe to show you that when you clear a keyframe, you need to clear all of these. And then it still jumps back up, but we did so many funky things with the easing and the tweens that it's kind of all over the place now. But if we wanted to fix it, we could easily do that by hand. If I go here, advanced settings, keyframes, make it a color that's not blue. I can see where that's going, so I can just be like, you know, I want this to go up this way, and I want this to curve like this, and then I want it to pop into place and stop. We'll go ahead and move it right up where the other one is. Boop. All right, And that's pretty much all you have to know for motion tweens. You don't have to do all of this complicated stuff all the time. If I just wanted to, let's say, we'll make another symbol here. F8. No. F8. Call this one box. If I know that I just want this box to go from here to here to here to here. Oh, I had both of them selected. You know, I could just do super basic stuff. Drag that down. Let's try this. Drag that up, and then we'll... Nope. There we go. Drag that down. Drag that up. So it just becomes a matter of kind of thinking of it backwards. Instead of thinking of it in terms of, you know, where is each keyframe going to go, you have to think of the arc or the curve that you're working on and then figure out from there, you know, where is that object going to go. So that's pretty much it for motion tweens, at least for basic stuff. There's more advanced things that you can do, but this is really all we need, especially just for today's simple exercise. And you don't have to get super complicated with motion tweens to still have really impressive results. So that is it for today's demonstration, and I will see you in the next one.